question was, who's the greatest in the kingdom? Well, I don't suppose that's a bad question. In other words, what kind of people, let me rephrase that question a little bit. What kind of people does the kingdom of God place in high regard? What kind of character is God looking for? What kind of people are exalted in His kingdom? I mean, you look across the nation. Different nations exalt different types of people. Hollywood exalts a certain standard. All right, our governments exalt a certain standard. Educational institutions. We have different people that we tend to hold in high regard. And the standard varies from man to man. So the question is in the kingdom of God, who's the greatest? Who is it that God exalts? Who is it that this kingdom considers to be great? Well, the Lord kind of shocked him that day. He sat down. But in particular, Mark said he called his apostles. Well, he called them particularly in. He wanted them to get this lesson because they're fussing among themselves who's going to be the greatest. And now I wonder what they're thinking. Because Jesus, He calls the 12 in close. Come on, get in here, fellas. I can see one of them sticking their elbow in the other's rib.
Yeah.
He's going to talk about me, fellas. Shoving the elbow and rib. I told you it's going to be me. I told you I'm going to sit on his right hand. I get his right hand. But nevertheless, he shocks them all. He looks over, and there's a little lad standing there, and I'm going to use one. I think he was probably, in my opinion, much smaller than this one, but I'm going to call this one. And he calls him. He says, come here. And he called him. Brought him over. And the Bible said he stood him in the midst. Now, this is my grandson, all right? The only grandson I got. I got granddaughters. This is the only grandson I got. And this little guy's 8 right here. I'm going to think he's probably, I think that guy, little kid he called over was more like 4 or 5. But I don't know exactly. But anyway, the Bible says he stood him in his midst. But then Mark says he took him up in his arms. I don't know if he did this. Or he set him up on his knee. Maybe like that right there. And then Jesus is fixing to preach. Stand right there. You don't have to be afraid. I know I'm putting it. But look at that. He realizes something. Now here's all these big guys standing around. And this little guy just got front and center of attention. And all eyes are now on the Master and on that little lad. Takes that little lad and sits him there and he says, whosoever will humble himself like this little child, he said, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. I want to emphasize something here tonight to you. And I want to talk to you about your relationship, your influence, your effect upon these guys, upon young men, children. So listen to me just for a moment. About 2 or 3 things, 3 things or so are going to emerge out of here. First of all, they're now looking at that child. He said, whoever will humble himself like this child. You know what Jesus said to come to that child? That child never argued with him. He came. Christ drew him in his arms, in his embrace. You know what? I don't think that kid was embarrassed over that. I think he thought, man, this is special. Yes, sir. Some of us get that close and express that kind of emotion and that kind of endearment. We don't seem to want to talk to Christ about Christ in terms of endearment. Are you ashamed to tell someone Jesus is everything to me? I love him so much. How often do you even tell him you love him? That little child that sat there with Jesus Christ, and Christ has got him wrapped up in his arms, was just there, delighting in the moment, being held in the arms of Christ. But sometimes we're too stuck up, we're too proud to show our love and our affection to Jesus Christ and to show that we delight in being that close to the Lord. More so than that, here's this little lad. This is interesting because the normal process of life is you come in this life, you're a babe, and then you grow to be a man. He's already got 12 men. But then Jesus is saying, basically, if you want to be great, That is, if you want to be a man, you want to be great, you got to start back here. You got to get down back here like this little guy is right here. That's the thing about Christianity. You don't come into it as a mature adult. You start as a child.
Right.
And there are certain childlike attitudes you never lose. Because you're always a child. He's always the father, and we're always a child. And there must always be certain things, the freedom of malice, the love, the humility, the teachableness, that can never leave you.
Right.
Can never leave you. If it does, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. But here's this little child, and I want to throw out a few things about him. And Jesus is just talking, and they're looking at that little kid. And what is this right here on my lap? I'll tell you what this is. This is a piece of plastic. This is something moldable. This can be a future pervert or a future prince.
Come on, bro.
This can be a future preacher or a future pimp.
Right.
This can be a future great saint of God or a mass murderer. I got a piece of plastic right here.
Come on.
Right.
I got something that's impressionable.
Yeah.
I got something that's moldable. I got something here that can be directed. I got something here that's not burdened down with addictions.
Right.
I got something here that's not burdened down with a lot of ties into this world, wrong friendships. I got something that's got a clean slate.
Yeah.
I got some innocence going on right here. I don't have a pile of greed. I don't have a pile of lust. Those kind of desires haven't even developed in this little fellow yet. I don't have any of that.
Jesus.
I don't have any bondages. I don't have any bad words floating around the mind. Don't even have bad pictures. Hello?
Come on, brother.
You got bad memories to erase, try to get rid of. I got none of that.
That's right.
Wow.
Wouldn't you like to preserve it? Wouldn't we like to keep it that way?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
And then, what makes it that this little fella, what makes it, same genes, same little guy, that he can turn out to be a great man of God, or he can turn out to be a homosexual? You got to be a great family man, love his wife, love his children, or be involved in many relationships. Well, I will tell you this. You see, he is born and he's got certain things in him by nature. God has placed with him an X and Y chromosome. He's got the chromosomes of a male, a man. He's got natural tendencies in him that I think would, although needing direction, will be naturally tended towards manliness. But why do some get to 16, 17, they're feminine, and others are masculine? A lot of that has to do with influence, teaching, who they're around. I've seen men that they're the man in the house. I would consider him a manly man. He's not effeminate by any means. But his son is as effeminate as they get. But I look around that house, Mama dominates. Some effeminism going on there.
Right.
And Daddy hadn't been strong to influence it. Daddy hadn't been strong to lead that house. And that daddy not long ago said, pray for my son. I hate to tell you, we can pray. But you missed the window. You missed the opportunity.
Jesus.
You missed that slot of time you had to make an impression on him and put him on the right path. You ain't got to be a slave to alcohol. There's no alcohol here. He's never tasted it. Never had a needle in his arm. It's not necessary. You don't have to go down that road. But I want you to understand that this right here today, that's what I want to drive home. What is your influence? What is the impression your life is making on these guys?
Jesus.
All right? Because we're in a culture where we're having to do the obvious. We have to make it known. We're having to state it. I tell this little guy all the time, you're a man.
Right. Amen.